In this video, I will talk about one of the most important patterns called the Strangler pattern. It's used to migrate from monolithic applications to microservices. And in this pattern, as you can see in the tree in front of you, the new tree, it strangles the old tree, which is the monolith in this case, until it takes over and the monolith will die. So Martin Fowler, when he was in one of his trip in Australia, I guess, he saw this pattern happening on fig trees, where it starts with one branch or one part that will start to build, and then it will start to strangle. So one strangler branch, and then it will strangle the tree, the old tree. It's called the strangle tree, until it takes over and it will become only the microservices. The same approach we will take with migration from the monolith to the microservices by strangling slowly the monolith, progressive migration. Instead of migrating one time and building something that will take years, we just take one functionality, we build the microservice first that will replace this functionality, and we use a facade interface or a proxy that will route the calls accordingly, as we will see in the hands-on. So first, you will see that the clients are calling the legacy monolith. And instead of keeping it growing, we built first the facade. And recently, the Strangler facade, I've been using AWS Appsync, as I will show in this hands-on as well. So first, you identify one functionality that you want to take out, and then build the microservice that will replace this functionality and use the Strangler facade to route the calls accordingly. So you see which calls that will route to the new facade, to the new microservice, and which ones needs to go to the old one, and then we make the clients to call the Strangler facade. And then you identify another functionality, and then you remove the old functionalities from the legacy monolith and stop the calls going to it, as we are seeing, and so on. Then the second functionality will also be routed, and we build this second functionality into a microservice until we remove the monolith completely. It becomes strangled by the Strangler microservices, and then after testing and validating that we're not missing anything, we move all the clients to the facade, and then this facade will become at the end API gateway, which another microservices design patterns. Well, this will become an API gateway to the rest, and voila, you've been able to migrate from the monolith to microservices. So in the next the remaining of the video, I will explain how to build GraphQL microservice using Appsync and Amplify. I gave it in a separate video as well. You can watch it if you don't want to watch, continue in this one. But here I will build, and I will show how easy it is. It helped me during the recent migration from in one of the companies I worked with, migration from the monolith to microservice, which didn't cost much, and it was few minutes you'll be able to build everything and start focus on the business and the functionality, the code that you want to do for the microservice, the functionality of the microservice, but it will build the infrastructure, take care of the sync for the database and creating the database for you as well. And I will explain also in another video how to build the facade using also Appsync and Amplify. So I hope you will enjoy this video and learn from it. Thank you so much. Hello everyone. Before we start building microservices, GraphQL microservice, I would like to give a quick introduction to understand how to build it, the components to build it. And I'll start with the Appsync, AWS Appsync and DynamoDB. So this is the GraphQL microservice that you see in front of you. It consists of AWS Appsync, and it talks to the DynamoDB. Who builds this microservice will see the wizard that will build this actually in just in a blink of an eye. So
This is the GraphQL microservice, and this is the final stage. For example, it would be GraphQL microservice. You might have REST microservice, that one that we built before in the previous videos, and you might have a API gateway. API gateway in this case is not the AWS API gateway, but it's an API gateway pattern, and we will use the Appsync as the API gateway, and it will route the code according to the right place. So you just have the schema and you do the query, and it will ask the right uh, microservice for the right information. Now, how can we build all of that? I talked about the wizard who will build this. It's like a wizard, really. It's not magic, but it uses cloud formation templates. But it's like a wizard. You give it the template, which is, we call it the schema, GraphQL schema, and you feed the AWS Amplify, and it does its magic with all the cloud formation templates, and voila, it builds the GraphQL microservice, builds everything, the tables, if you have even even if you have the Elasticsearch, it builds the resolvers by itself. And in this video, it's an introduction. We'll see how to do all of that hands-on in the next videos. This video is to explain what's GraphQL, what are the types, and what is the schema. So let's start by understanding what's GraphQL, which is simply actually its endpoint, similar to REST and standards, but it uses different way of calling the APIs and manipulating the data. So the big difference is the way we call the APIs. So instead of calling APIs to get the information, you actually issue a query and you receive the information that you need. One shot. You don't have to like give multiple APIs to the call, REST APIs. In addition to that, also the mutation. If you instead of post or update, you just do mutation so you can create a new value or add a new value. So it's similar to SQL uh, database. If you're familiar with SQL database, it will give you actually the ability to query. So it's a query language, so it makes it easier. And in this case, you'll find yourself being able to interact, as you can see in this diagram. You can have a resolver, so you have the query, and then the resolvers, which multiple functions will resolve the query calling either database or another service according to what is needed from them. Now let's talk about the schema. So we have the schema. It consists of the word type, which is similar to class name. So you just say there is a type, which type of author in this case. So it's exactly similar to the class name. Some object that would be author, and when you search, you will ask for this author to get the author back. As you can see here, the model, this is a specific, the at model that you add here. It's actually only for Amplify, in this case, Appsync and Amplify. When you add this at model, it will actually create a specific table for the model. So the directive model here is actually to transform this type into a table inside DynamoDB and create it automatically with Amplify. So let's grab our gears and see how are we going to build GraphQL microservices using AWS Amplify. Let's see you in the next video.
Hello everyone. So in this video, I would like to show you how can you create a GraphQL microservice by providing the schema to Amplify, and you say Amplify push, and it will create the microservice for you, including the database, the endpoints, the GraphQL endpoints, resolvers, and how they communicate. All what you need to do is just provide the schema. Let's go, and you'll find it actually very interesting journey where you find it's so easy to create the entire GraphQL microservice. And the reason is not to actually in this video to teach about AppSync. It's a very short video. I'm trying to do things quickly and without going into the theories. and the details, so that the goal is to be able to use those microservices that we will build easily. The easiest way to build a microservice, so we can understand the microservices design patterns in action. So let's go to the terminal, the command window, and let's start installing Amplify CLI. To install Amplify CLI, this is Mac, what I'm using. So you need to do sudo to have the admin credential, but in general, it is npm install -g to be like general on your machine. And you do install the AWS Amplify CLI, as you can see. This will take time because it will install the CLI on your machine and start configuring the machine. And I hope that you went through, before doing this, going through the article, which I will put it, I might do a video as well, but there is an article how to prepare the environment in your Mac machine. If you're using Windows, I will put some links on how to do it in Windows as well. And then next, we will try to create a React app, which will just, I know this command is like also another magic, but it will install all the needed things to create a React project. So you just say npx create React app and give it the name, which in this case is GraphQL microservice. It will take some time. After it finishes, it will give you those command, and you can go through the directory. So go into the directory that you created, GraphQL microservice, and then you start by doing code dot. Also need to configure this. I will give some instructions how to configure the Visual Studio Code. When you do code dot, we will continue working in the Visual Studio Code actually. This is provided by Microsoft, but it's open source. And it's actually great, works well with AWS, and you can install things specifically for SAM, the serverless model that you can work with. To be able to start a command window in Visual Studio Code, you just do control backtick, which is the key that's at the top of the left over the tab, and you will get this command terminal. Before we go into the details of what we need to do, we can start by initializing the project by using Amplify init. And most of the questions that we'll get, we'll answer them the defaults. So they will suggest a name for your project, GraphQL microservice. You have like the environment, it's dev environment right now. You will use Visual Studio Code, JavaScript, React for the front end, and then start asking for directories for build, source, and some scripts that you will use to run the project. And it will show us that it's using AWS CloudFormation. Actually, all the magic is through AWS CloudFormation. You need to create a AWS profile, which I already have profiles. I will use the default one. And after that, it will build and do the configuration for you so you can start working and building. Actually, right now, it is communicating with the console, and you can find your project in the Amplify project on the console, as we will see in later videos as well. So right now it will keep initializing and it will build, and you can keep watching it and see what it builds in there, but I will skip that and go to the screen. When it finished, it will give you, after it finished, it will tell you, okay, you can use Amplify add API to add the API to your project. And in this case, it will add the API and create it for you. But before we do that, let's go to the directory. It created a new directory called Amplify, and inside it there is the backend where you can see multiple things. I want to just point the tags, the JSON one. It's very important if you're part of a company and you need to set certain tags so to identify your project. So this is very important to learn. But for now, this is where Amplify will store the code for you. So let's add the API. The API is similar to what we've done in the previous videos in the API gateway, but this will be GraphQL API, which will be Appsync. So it will ask you, would you like to have GraphQL or REST? Of course, we'll use GraphQL for this one, but it can also build REST API. We will use API key for the authorization. We'll talk about this later. And then you can enter a description. This is optional, but I will skip this for now. You don't need it. It's just optional. But we will use the API key, which we will provide in our front end. You can also choose the default for this for the expiration. 7 days will be fine. And then let's add additional changes, or you can just say I'm done and you will move on. But let's just say no for the next two configurations. And then the most important part will be the schema. So we don't have a schema, so we'll say no here. But we would like to create a schema right now, which the question that it will ask, there are two options. For this project, I will use the simple one, which is a single object. And as you can see and note, the files are increasing. There's the API under the backend, which has all the code. And then it will ask, do you want to edit the schema? We'll say yes. Let's edit the schema. This schema is built for you automatically, and I will not change it for now. I will give the example with it. It's as easy as it is. So it will build a to-do object. The derivative, as I said, the at model, it will create actually the table. So this will cause those 5 letters will create a database for you, DynamoDB, and sync with it. The ID is ID. There are scalar types, which ID is one of them. It will be generated automatically for you. String is one of them. And as I said, the exclamation mark at the end means this is mandatory. You have to provide it. So in this case, cannot be null. It's non-nullable. And the name that you provide and the description. So this is like kind of to-do list. So you provide what is the to-do item you need to do and the description of it. Now, let's move to the console. You can actually move to the console by saying Amplify API Console, and this will open the console for you. And you can search for Amplify API, AWS Amplify, and you can go to the Amplify. This is what I wanted to show you, the GraphQL microservice that was created for you. This is the project, and it has been deployed successfully. But most of the work will not do it here. But what I wanted to show you, this one, and also the work that was done in the behind the stage. One of the things is the cloud formation. This is very important to see the cloud formation stacks. They build multiple nested stacks, as you can see. Those are 3 stacks that been created during this exercise. And if you click on it, you'll see multiple items created, the Appsync, one of them, the DynamoDB is one of them, and there are a lot of resources being created in the middle. And be careful, of course, because if you're using the free tier, this will cost some money for doing those items for you. So you can go through it, look into the stacks, and you can look into the resources being created as well and see which items that being created, what has been created for you, the policies, the IAM rule, all of this being done for you. You don't have to do all of these configurations. It's actually, if you try to do it yourself, you can try, of course, do all of this from scratch, but you will find it's a lot of work. Those are the resources, as you can see, the GraphQL API that's created by Appsync, and there's a lot of code actual. This is the doing the table inside DynamoDB as well. Let's go to Appsync. This is where most of the work will be doing. GraphQL microservice dev environment. This is the one that we Amplify created for us. And of course, if you go to the schema, you will be able, those are the instructions, how to install it. This is for iOS, but we're using JavaScript, of course. So this is how you initialize and being able to configure your project. Let's go to schema. This is the schema. Most of it created for us, but we only provided the type of to do. And if we keep looking, you will find, yeah, this is the type to do that we only provided. And we only provided just the name and description ID. It created 2 more fields for us, created add and updated add. Those will be automatic. If you go to the query, you'll be able to query for the results. You can just by clicking on it, as you can see here, it will generate the query for you. But I want to do mutation first because we don't have anything to show. Mutation is just about the add. It's in the CRUD, it's create. So you can create to do. As you can see, it's very similar to the REST APIs because you have the create and you have CRUD, the CRUD operations. Let's delete the query. Let's create something quickly. I will not focus on it and I will not query it back, but I want to show how easy it is. But in the next video or the next session, I will show how it's being done. So let's just put the name. So here, let's say the name writes an article, for example. We can arrange it better by moving the name and the line below. And you can add, as you can see, you can keep add the fields like the description and the ID. So let's add, for example, if you decided to add the description, you go and click in the description and it will add it for you and you can write on it what you want. So let's add description, move it again. It's messing up my alignment. So in the description field, you can write, let's say this is write an article about the amazing tool Amplify, and it will generate the ID automatically. And of course, you can copy the ID, click on the execute query. There are documents also. I wanted to show the documents here about the mutation, how to do it, the schema. So if you go to the mutation, you can see create to do, what you need to do, the inputs, what are the items that you need to do. It's generated automatically for you. It's called GraphQL. Let's now execute the query. So it created an item. Here's the ID. Of course, I will not just focus on querying it. The screen here is small for me, but I will show it in the next screen actually. But you can copy the ID from here, create query, and get the data. So just you need to delete the mutation, of course, and then go again and look for query. Click the plus sign to add the query. Here we go, the query, you add the plus sign, you add the query, the get to do, and then you provide the ID. You have to provide the ID to be able to get an item. So here we can have the ID. Yeah, I will took partial ID. It will not show anything. It will show null, of course, because I didn't take the full ID. But I will show it in the next video, or inside the same video, but the next exercise that will go together. We will spend more time inside the query, but I want to get bigger screen to be able to have more real estate and be able to work. The thing that I wanted to show you as well will be the database, as how it's creating the database and how it's creating this item inside the database. It's creating in the DynamoDB, and when you create on the left side, you go, so if you click here, this burger menu, and go to the data source, this is the to-do table that's just created for you automatically in DynamoDB. You don't have to do anything. Cloud Formation Templates did it. So when you click on it, it will open a new tab inside DynamoDB. And this is the table. Click on items. You'll find the item that we just added, the to-do item. It will, if you click on it, you will see that we have the ID and name, write an article, the description string, which write an article about the amazing tool Amplify. So for now, we will just leave this one, and we will go and do the mutation and the query the right way, as we said. So here, this is the console. I had it just added more space so I can work, and now we're trying to do the mutation. We'll have the ID that we will provide, and we need to get back the name. So the mutation, we will add the name, and you can also add it if you type. So if you type, it will give you help. It will auto-complete for you. So you add name, and then let's say to do one that I want to do just first thing to do. And then you can add description if you want, but just write D, it will complete for you. So it will be easy not to mess up which field that you want to add. And this what I'll do something to do something, and actually you can create this way. All of those are options except the name. And now let's copy the full ID from here and try to do mutation. Of course, if you want to see the items to bring back, you want to see more than the ID, you can add also the name here. The curly braces underneath is just more like the things that you want to see back. Let's create another item to do two, to do another thing, and you can see that this is to do two. Let's take the ID of this item and copy, make sure to do Control C or Command C, and delete this mutation, create a query. Yeah, let's see it in the data source as well. Here, if you click on the table, click on items, you'll find that we added. I want to just show you that they will be added automatically when you do the mutation. So it's added new item to do one, to do something, to do two, to do another thing. Those are the two items created right now. Now let's go back again to the console and go to the query one more time, the queries, and now we still have the ID copied. So I'll just get rid of this, create a query, go to get to do. As you can see, it's using get, which is actually a REST, one of the REST HTTP verbs. And here the name, let's add the name. This is where you get. So the second curly braces name, and you can write it down or click on the boxes on the left side, and you can get whatever, any of those things you do. And when you click on it, you provided the ID and you received the 202. Let's get the description as well. Execute the query again, you get the description to do another thing. And of course, you can have update add and the ID created add, execute the query again, it will get all of those items. So whatever you list here are the items that you receive, but you have to list at least one thing because GraphQL is specific. It doesn't get everything. You need to be efficient, you need to get certain things. The documentation, again, it's called GraphQL, and as you can see here, it will explain to you the items that you can provide to get in the query, the ID, name. And I explained before the scalar types, which are strings, ID, the integer. It has about 4 scalar types, and the rest you can create yourself as part of the type. Like to do, for example, is now a type that you can use and have a list and query and do some actions on this type. As you can see, it is pretty simple, straightforward, and this is what we will use. In the future sessions, we just add a new type, it will create a new table, it will create, and you can add those new tables, and we'll start interacting between different microservices. Of course, if you want to create another microservice, this Amplify actually uses something called backend for front end. So you'll always have for every front end a backend. And we haven't got to the front end yet, but as we go through the sessions, I've already have multiple articles how to create React and Redux and fetch data from APIs. We will use those and create queries using Apollo client. I will show how can we query on the front end, and we'll create apps actually end to end, which will be integrating with each other as well. So you might have one UI, one front end that integrates with multiple microservices, and in this case, I prefer always to use the API gateway pattern. Okay, let's summarize what we've done. Amplify created the schema for us, and then we fed Amplify with this schema using Amplify push. It was able to create all the resources on the cloud, on AWS cloud, and we received GraphQL microservice in just a few minutes. As you can see, it's pretty easy to create a microservice using this way, adding data, having interactions. That's why this is what I'm going to use to explain the design patterns. My focus is not into those technologies specific. I would encourage you to go and read more. I might have some videos about to explain Amplify, Appsync, and GraphQL, but I just scratched the surface here because my goal is to explain the microservices design patterns, the interaction, how can you have event bus, how can you have the data flowing between different microservices. And I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new from it. And let's meet in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning in.